and I request Mr. Nitin Seth for his address, also the AV team with the presentation.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah. Very happy to be here. These are very, very special times. A lot of my colleagues here have talked about it. We are in the AI age, and it's bigger than what any one of us can imagine. Mankind has, over the last 10,000 years, gone through perhaps 200 general innovations. I think Sandeep mentioned electricity, so including that. And this is, AI is maybe the 200th big kind of general innovation. And it's going to transform our world, our lives, our civilization in ways which are pretty dramatic. And the foundation of that, it has got three foundations: compute, algorithms, and data. And data is by far of the three. There is a lot of focus that's gone on compute and algorithms. But data is how you win or lose. Yeah. Data is how you win or lose. And data is quite an enigma. While we talk about the AI age, the data explosion itself is quite remarkable, and I'll talk more about it. But data is an enigma. It is full of abundant opportunities, but it's very, very challenging to harness. I think Satyajit talked a little bit about it. And I framed this as a paradox. I've written a fairly extensive book on it, called Mastering the Data Paradox. That on one hand you have a data deluge, on the other hand you have a drought. You have a drought of insights and actions. So data is a very complex beast. And I'll throw some light. The what of it, the what of the opportunities that Teji talked about, others talked about, is I think fairly well established. Yeah. The key issue here is the how. Anybody who's a practitioner and not a salesperson knows that it's the how. It's the how. Yeah. Because the opportunity is huge, but ability to realize it is very tough. So let's dive into it. So just to kind of set the stage, there are, when we think about where we are, there are three intersecting forces. I call them the trifecta or the three Dev, which is digital, data, and AI, which are really cause and effect of each other. It's like a cosmic dance. These three are playing together with each other. Data is the foundation for digital, but then digital creates this massive data exhaust, which is leading to the data explosion. Data is the foundation for AI. But at the same time, the most complex problems with data quality, data security, AI is probably the way of handling them. So it's kind of these three forces are colliding. And these three forces, the trifecta, are probably the biggest force in the world today. Now, the center of this is the data explosion. If you look at over the last 25 years, and if you look at growth, yeah, and just pay a little attention to this slide, because what's happening in the world will jump at you. Okay, so if you look at population, that's grown by 30%. If you look at the global GDP over the last 20-25 years, it's kind of tripled. Okay, and if you look at data, that has grown by 100 to 150,000 times. Okay, I'll say that again, 100 to 150,000 times. In human history, very rarely have we seen an explosion of this nature of anything in this short a period of time. Okay, just to put this explosion in context, 90% of the data of the world has got generated over the last 2 to 3 years. It's quite phenomenal. We have 10,000 years of recorded human history, and 90% of the data that we see today is over the last 2 to 3 years. So it's something quite amazing that's happening. Now, when we think about this explosion, the vast majority of this is unstructured data. The 99% of the growth over the last couple of years is unstructured data. Okay? That's really what has happened. And most of our data management historically has been structured data. We haven't really historically gotten unstructured data into play. Now with generative AI, which some of my colleagues spoke about, that's the unlock. That's the unlock, which is bringing that unstructured data into play. Some of my colleagues talked about multimodal models. It was fascinating. It's fascinating. So it's just like a huge unlock, and the possibilities with that, because most of the data actually we were not using. Now with that, there are very interesting ways that you can bring this into play. Now this is the fascinating part of the story. With this, every industry is going to get transformed. Every industry, yeah. But there is a however, which is the data paradox, yeah. So the data paradox I spoke about, that there is a data deluge, but there is a drought of insights and actions. It's like the famous quote from the ancient mariner, that water everywhere, yet not a drop to drink. Yeah, that is the kind of situation we are in. And the three manifestations of this, again, anybody who has been involved in data would know this. There are three symptoms. There are three symptoms of the data paradox. First is that every data initiative costs too much and takes too long. Yes? Anybody involved in data here? Yeah, especially you spending the money. Yeah, it costs too much, takes too long. Yeah, and I built my career over the last 25, 30 years with data, so I think I can talk very humbly about it. Now, even when you get something from the initiative, finally, teams don't have the data they need. Yes? Familiar? Yeah. And the third part, which we often don't talk about, that even if you get the data, teams are not very effective with the data they have. Yeah. So there is all this excitement, and as technology industry, we are very good at getting our buyers to buy by creating a FOMO. Yeah. But if you look at the reality of it, this is the reality. Now, if you kind of dig deeper into the root cause of this, because if you want to, you would want to solve this, isn't it? Because you're talking about billions or hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent. So if you are not getting enough throughput out of it, at some point it will catch up. If you want to solve it, you have to get to the root causes. Now, traditionally, there are many issues, but there are three big root causes. The first is that data means different things to different people. But traditionally, the connect with the front or the business layer of data, or the business layer where is getting used, and the infrastructure and the many layers in between is very weak. It's very weak. So data from an infrastructure perspective, how AWS or Azure would see it, a data platform, how Satyajit might see it, and then the analytics layer or the AI layer, how Sandeep might see it, or the business user layer, they're all not connected. Okay, that's a big problem. The second is data quality. Yeah. Now, the promise of big data was that, as is the law of large numbers, that as the size increases, you can actually do with poor quality. Yeah. That has not proven out at all. At all. That is okay if you're looking at directional insights, but the moment you're looking at actionable things which are actionable for an individual, as a bank would need to do or a healthcare provider would need to do, you can't go with law of large numbers. Yeah. So data quality, with big data, data quality issue becomes even bigger. And the third issue is silos. And I think some of my colleagues talked about it. I think Vinod, we also talked about it, that there are data silos, there are system silos, and most importantly, there are organization silos. And because of that, data doesn't connect. Yeah. So these are three issues which have always been there with data. And now that we are in the AI age, and especially with Gen AI, as we're looking to bring the big mass of unstructured data into play, there are three additional big issues. Number one is contextualization. Yeah. So an LLM only gives you, let's say, a 40-60% answer. That's very good if you are using ChatGPT and you feel very good about it. Yeah. But for an actionable insight, yeah, the way Teji was talking about, you can't just use that. You have to contextualize it with enterprise data, with domain data, so that you can now drive that accuracy which is closer to 85-90% or more. The second is about operationalizing your infrastructure. How do you manage the different layers so it comes together, which becomes way more complex as the nature of data has evolved. It is multimodal data, you have vector databases. So the traditional challenges around bringing this infrastructure together have increased multifold. And finally, security. Yeah, that especially for industries that are regulated like banking, healthcare, this becomes a huge issue. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw some, it's not to throw a spanner in the works. Data is a humongous opportunity. But if we do not recognize what is happening, what are the challenges, we will not solve it. Yeah. Today there is a huge challenge around ROI. Yeah. We have been spending a lot of capital. Yeah. But this question of what's the ROI is still something to be answered. And at the heart of all of this, if you really go beyond even these 6 issues and say, what's the mudde ki baat, or what is really happening? What has been happening is that we are trying to solve for data as a technology issue. As a technology issue. And I run a technology company. So I have to be careful that I'm not cutting the branch I'm sitting on. But it is a reality that our kind of default has been that let's kind of build this infrastructure which will bring this data together. On top of that, I will build this customer 360, and then I will get these fantastic insights which will solve everything. Now, that's a pipe dream. That's a pipe dream because data has been exploding at a pace which is much higher than any technology infrastructure can really deal with. Yeah. So the only way you can really deal with this is to approach it logically, that how do you narrow the data? The problem with big data is the sheer bigness of it. Yeah, and the loose connection with the final outcome. Yeah, so it's kind of like a path we have been going down for 20 years, and I think there is an urgent need of correction of that we don't just solve it as a physical or a technology issue, but we have to solve it at a more of a business and logical level. So here's the framework, and you should probably grab a copy of my book. There's a stall there. You can get it. So so that's where I have evolved a framework, a front to back framework. How you think about it. It's got kind of 13 layers to 13 elements to it. That starting by defining the problem, the business, the customer problem, and narrowing the what is needed down. Narrow it down. Yeah, and then is the data itself. That's the hero of the story. And there is multi-source data. A lot of the data is now open source. There is real-time data. I think you also talked about real-time. And there is the notion of proprietary data. It's very interesting that in a world where most of the data is now open source, how do you drive a competitive advantage? I think we're going to discuss this in a panel discussion after this. And proprietary data, which is truly yours, is key to that. Then there is, of course, the stack, which is where 95% of the effort or attention goes, but it's just one element. Yeah? And then there are the core processes, agility. How do you drive something which is a use case while there is a speed to which is kind of you building the bigger picture of it. There is the data democratization. How do you make it available across the organization? That's the fundamental nature of data and AI. It's a very powerful notion which we should discuss more, that data was a source of power, because it was scarce. Now data is abundant. So it is not to be held. It is to be shared across the organization. It has deep implications on organization culture, organization structures. How do you really use it? And then security. And that's the duality. That's the trade-off. When you are talking about democratization, the security issues also become more. And that's the pin, which can prick the entire balloon. Yeah. And then there are organizational issues, which are very deep. Alignment, who owns the data? It's a very tricky question. Because historically, we have wanted ownership. Yeah, and tight ownership means single point ownership. But when data is so complex, it's like multi-headed hydra, who owns it? Yeah, it's a complex question. Data culture, how do you drive decisions? Unfortunately, decisions historically have been driven by the hippo. Hippo is the highest income person in the room, right? Highest paid person. And you can do everything, but still if that's how you make decisions, then how do you How do you affect the organization culture and talent? Yeah, that's also a very big debate. What skills do we really need? Yeah, and I would submit that data science, which was quote unquote one of the sexiest jobs of the 21st century, is very rapidly losing sheen because a lot of that is now available. And data engineering which was kind of like the back end, is becoming a lot more of an imperative. And then there are two sutradhars, right, which kind of span across. There is data quality, which I had mentioned earlier, and there is this notion of data products. That how do you make your data use cases, your data initiatives more repeatable? Yeah. How do you connect from front to back? Yeah. Again, a huge topic. So I rushed through it. This is kind of, I wanted to give you a little bit of a perspective of that this whole data topic, the paradox, how do you unlock it? And finally, just to close with some thoughts on India, that look, we are really at a very special time in human history. Okay, this is the fourth industrial revolution, and with every advent of every industrial revolution, the world power structure has changed. We know that pre the first industrial revolution, India and China were like more than 50% of the global GDP. Historically, in recorded history, India has never been lower than 25% of global GDP, and we know where that went. Yeah, with the second industrial revolution, which was electricity and so on, first Europe came up, then US came up, and the third industrial revolution, which is the information age, US became more dominant, Europe started to go down, China came up, and now the fourth industrial revolution, which is often also called the digital age, I think it presents a disruption is going to happen. Disruption is going to happen, if you look at the course of history. And I think we have a huge opportunity in India and as Indians of really, this is, I think, our time. A lot of the underlying factors are coming together. And again, that's a big discussion, but there are at least 4 things from a data perspective, given that's our topic today, which I think in India we need to think about. The first is from an enterprise perspective, that how do our enterprises really truly master data or master the data paradox to get a competitive advantage in their industries and do that globally. This can be a source of competitive advantage, not just locally, but globally. The second is that in the AI age, AI doesn't happen without data. And there is, America is today technology rich, but we are data rich. Yeah, and both need to come together. And that potentially presents a tremendous opportunity for India, not just to be an IT services hub, but to be a data hub, which is both data creation, data contextualization. Third is from a public services perspective, an opportunity of creating massive public data sets. We have the data, but to bring it together, make it accessible so it can drive public services, whether it's smart cities, it's agriculture, it's healthcare. There are tremendous set of opportunities to be explored. And finally, how do we unleash the AI-led entrepreneurial revolution in India? Yeah, because jobs are going to go for sure. Only the amount is a question. If you look at over the next 10, 15 years, 35, 40% jobs will go. It's a huge number, especially for a country like ours. It's humongous. It's humongous. The only way we can balance that is through an extraordinary explosion of entrepreneurial activity. Yeah, because each industry is going to get disrupted because of AI, and I think that's an opportunity for us. But to make it real, the cost of doing AI has to be decreased, and which is the data infrastructure, which is the compute infrastructure, and I think nationally that's something that we have to really think about. So I'll close here. This is a fascinating times, with the AI age. Data is the key actor in this. Yeah, we say AI, but it's really data which is the winning or the losing kind of difference, and it's not an easy one. It's not an easy one. We should not underestimate that, but it can be solved. Yeah, and I think that's a great opportunity for all of us in India, and I think that should be our resolve. That should be our ambition. Our ambition should be high. That it's not just incremental, but how do we use this to kind of dramatically leapfrog? Yeah. Thank you so much.